Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors, your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. I'm Winston Chester. Glad to hear this Wednesday morning. It's a nice, cool morning here in September, the last week of September, and I know you're enjoying this weather much as we all are. Now let's take a look at our weather brought to us by Haney Technical Center at 767-5500 corner Baldwin Road and Highway 77. All kind of good programs there. Run by and check those folks out. Now it's high today. It's still going to be up in the 80s, about 86 or 87 here on the coast, and low tonight to be right around 69. So it's still in the 60s. We've had some nice, cool weather. Now the big thing though is the water temperature has dropped down, like I said yesterday, to 81 degrees, and that's a reflection of what's going on environmentally as far as the sun and as far as the winds and all. Let's take a look at the river readings. The Apalachicola at Bluntstown is steadied out at a 0.4, been there all week, and looks like it's going to stay there for the next week. The Choctawhatchee now has had a big roller coaster ride during the early part of the week, but it's settled on down, and it's going to read a 4.0 for the rest of the week, and good level reading on the Choctawhatchee River, okay? Taking a look at our tide charts this morning. We're getting ready now. We're talking about these weekend tides. We got a full moon coming up. Now the full moon coming up will be this weekend, and we call it, a lot of people call it a corn moon or the harvest moon in late September or early October, whatever that moon comes. It's usually a beautiful moon. We're looking on today, Wednesday the 25th, we're looking at a high tide is going to be right around noon. It's going to be falling out all afternoon. Will be a low tide at 6 o'clock tonight, 6:07 tonight. Okay? That takes care of our weather, and we're going to be right back with our special guest. All right, welcome back, and welcome Captain Ken Parable.
Good morning. How are you?
Good to have you.
Glad to be here.
We're going to, we got all kind of stuff, Ken, and we'll try to get started on it. But one of the things our viewers are so good about sending questions in, especially when you're coming on, get some of these things clarified. Now, so let's do our question first, okay?
Clear up the mud.
Well, yeah, and we're going to the expert right here now. Make sure we're all doing it right, staying on the right side of the law. One of the questions people ask out around the Grand Lagoon area. There's a sign out there that says "Private basin, do not enter," and they were under impression that they could waterways are like public. So, what's the legality of these?
To my knowledge, without knowing the specific place he's talking about, the water bottoms are owned by the state of Florida. They're considered sovereign submerged lands, and you can enter those waters legally by boat, not get out on the land, and not be in a trespass situation. It sounds like this may be a courtesy issue where they're requesting people to stay out. For various reasons. I'm sure they have their problems with theft and vandalism and whatever else by the water at times. But to my knowledge, that area there the water bodies are owned by the state of Florida, so you wouldn't be a trespass issue. Okay,
very good. That's good. Now here's another one. This has happened. I think anybody's been out in the Gulf of Mexico, this has happened to them. They're out there fishing and got a good bottom. They're fishing on a good structure. And a dive boat comes barreling up and anchored next to them, and they want to know what's the situation there.
And I'll pose a question to the viewer. If another fishing boat pulled up and anchored and started fishing next to you, what would be the difference? Actually, you'd be aggravated with both.
Yeah,
I would. I've pulled up and left from dive boats pulling up and fishing next to me, and or a fishing boat pulling up. At times they'll pull up next to you where you can almost hop from your boat to theirs.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, and there's no law prohibiting it. It's the Gulf of Mexico, the water bottoms are everybody's. It's more of a courtesy and a treat your neighbor like you'd want to be treated type deal, but there's no law prohibiting it either from a fisherman coming up next to you or a dive boat.
Very interesting. I don't know if you do a study or something, if people did stay there and kept fishing, if they keep catching fish or
I've heard both.
Yeah.
I've heard that they have not caught fish, and then I've heard they caught fish with divers in the water.
Yeah.
And I really don't have any first-hand experience to know because I usually pick up and leave.
I'm the same way. We just say we'll go somewhere else.
Right.
I've always had this, speaking of courtesy and all, I've always had this football length distance that I try to stay away from people in our football field, football field, and just they, you know.
I figure if he wants to be there and wants that spot worse than I do, then he can have it.
Okay, now we got dove season coming up. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but while we're doing question and answer now, in a dove field, tell us about, you know, a lot of people like to take the kids dove shooting and all that. So tell us about the license and hunter safety.
If the children are under 16, they can hunt without a license. They can, but they have to be supervised by an adult.
Okay.
And they would need to have our hunter education card or have attended our hunter education class. If they're under 16 and just helping retrieve birds, they wouldn't need anything. You know, they're participating in the hunt, but they're exempt from licensing. If they're over 16 and they're retrieving birds, they're considered participating in the hunt, and they would need a license to participate. The same goes for like people turkey hunting. If you're participating and the caller is calling, but somebody else is doing the shooting, you're still participating in the hunt and causing that turkey to come to you, in other words. And so you would need a license in the same scenario. So under 16 hunting, no license, but need to be supervised and need to have the hunter education class. Over 16, they can hunt by themselves. They need to have the hunting license. And of course, in order to purchase the hunting license, they need to have proof of taking and attended the course.
Okay. That's a good question. Thank y'all so much for that. That's a lot of good questions, y'all. And what about, you know, we got my dove decoy up here. Is it legal to decoy doves?
Yes.
That is legal to do that.
Legal to decoy doves.
Okay. You know, I've read both sides of that story. Some people said they won't come in and decoy, and I've had decent luck before with them.
I've never used them. I've never been on the field that used them.
Yeah.
Usually
I just stick them in the ground a little bit, but then I've had other hunters shoot at them.
Pretty big doves.
That's a long time ago. These guys just they were just out there playing around, but they said they'd buy me some more. But okay.
While we're on doves, you know, we can talk about bag limit is 15.
15. A lot of people think it was 12.
Used to be 12.
Yeah.
It's gone up. I don't remember when, but it's 15 now. Bait, of course, that's a whole other story if you want to get into baiting after a bid or if we have time now. But
okay, let's. I'll tell you what we'll do, because I was going to talk to you off air and make sure we got all these questions squared away. But let's go and take our break now, and then we'll come back and talk about the legality of baiting and illegality of it. Okay, we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Sitting here with Captain Ken Paramore at FWC, talking about all the pros and cons of doing different ways, and we want to keep everybody legal. And I appreciate all the questions you people send in. You see, y'all get questions a lot too.
Our phones, particularly this time of year, and even before it's really busy before the hunting periods, and it's really busy before the fishing starts, like March and April. You know, with all the questions, which are good because that's what we're here for, to keep them informed and hopefully keep them out of trouble.
Yeah, and I think, you know, all of our viewers and all, everybody wants to do the right thing.
Exactly.
And we want to just make sure we are doing the right thing
right.
and get it all clarified. Now, speaking of clarification now, there's always a big issue on baiting fields and what fields are baited or not baited. So what's the legal definition of a baited field?
A baited field would be basically any grain or seed material that have been brought into the field, you know, been carried into the field. Hasn't been grown in the field, hasn't been manipulated in the field, hasn't been mowed in the field, but if you put it on your back in a sack and put it in a tractor and spread it or poured it out of a bag, that's baiting.
That's pretty simple right there.
Right. I do encourage the hunters to look around whatever field they're invited to see what's on the ground, you know, particularly where they're going to be sitting and shooting. Walk around the field. If it's a barren, open, dirt field and you've got top sown, scattered, cracked corn, bird seed, and then these other grains that look like they've been just scattered, broadcast with a spreader or poured out of a bag. Years ago, they used to ride fields in ATVs and pickup trucks, and the guy was on the back, and he was pouring it out of the bag as the truck was driving around the field, and you could follow the trail of the grain and the corn wherever it was. That's not been grown there. If it's a standing crop or something that's been in the ground that a bush hog has mowed and scattered it everywhere, you're also going to have the leaves and the stalks and the other stuff that's cut up, and as well as the seed. That's the legal part.
Okay.
You just can't carry any grains in and broadcast them prior to shooting it.
Okay, that keeps it pretty simple. But
Right.
for all of us that've been growing it all year, been year after year, they've been growing on that farm, and it grows up, and then it's cut on, it's spread out with a.
Right.
That's legal.
Bush
that's
hog,
all
yeah.
from bush
Right.
hog knowledge.
Right.
Okay.
But if you carry it in there, and two of the worst that we see is cracked corn and bird seed.
Yeah.
They're not manufactured and or grown on that field.
Okay.
That's baiting.
Okay. All right. That makes it simple right there. If you take it in and
Right.
and do it. And I know a lot of years ago used to be a lot of that going on. I don't know a lot of people doing it now. They're still doing it as much as they used to.
A lot of times they'll just take some stuff in and sweeten up whatever's there. Let's say there's a field that's been brown top millet and they mowed it. Well, we have had occasion where a day or two before, the night before, they'll go in with a spreader and throw some stuff in to mix in with it, which makes it difficult to determine, but if it's cracked corn, you have to wonder, well, how did this get here? Or bird seed or a mixture of seeds. So it's still done, but it's not as bad as it used to be years ago. There's a lot of natural stuff anymore in these peanut fields after they harvest. Anything that's been harvested is going to have a byproduct laying on the ground, whether it's a corn field or a peanut field, and the birds will naturally come to that. So, and that's legal because that was grown there. It was either harvested or manipulated there, and what fell on the ground fell on the ground.
Okay. All right, so we all set for the dove shoot now. It's October the 6th. And then, of course, right after dove season, we've got squirrel season sneaking up on us.
It's going to be pretty wide open after the 6th. The following weekend, I think, is the 13th. Squirrel season will be open in private land only. Management areas is still, I think, in November. October the 20th, archery season comes in, so that will be 7 days after the squirrel season. Archery will come in for like a month. And then there's the Thanksgiving weekend is a general gun. Then we have a week of muzzleloader. There's a crossbow season. I think immediately follows archery, which is one I was trying to think of. It's crossbow season, and so we've got open season for deer, particularly October 20th on, as far as archery is concerned, and so there'll be people in the field after the 6th.
All right, let's go from hunting to fishing. Now, you sent me this email. This is really good stuff on bass fishing. The state of Florida is setting up, and this is brand new and all, but it's a recognition program for these big bass fishermen. It
is. It's matter of fact, I just got my hands on it 2 days ago, and I'm not as familiar with it probably to talk about on here today as I should be. But it's called a trophy catch program, and our agency has put together a trophy catch program to help gather data on big bass statewide, and then get the data and also recognize the anglers that caught those fish, and we've put them in 3 categories. It's a lunker, a trophy, and a Hall of Fame club. And the best I can do is to tell people to either go by one of our offices or go on our webpage and research it. It starts October the 1st and it runs through April, and you can pre-register, and it's for bass 8 pounds and bigger. And there's categories like from 8 to 10 pounds, I think, is the trophy. From 10 to 12, it's the lunker, and over 13 is the Hall of Fame club. And you have to photograph your catch, document the weight and the length on the trophy and the lunker class. The Hall of Fame class, we have to have a representative from our agency that will come, and you need to keep the fish alive, and that fish has to be over 13 pounds.
Oh man, that's a big one.
Yeah. All the fish need to be released in the water that they were caught in alive. The biologist will determine if the fish is suitable for releasing, if it's the Hall of Fame category. You're allowed to hold the fish in a live well to exceed a bag limit by executive order, or in a body of water that's close to the taking of bass. In other words, up here, what comes to mind would be the Carter Tract.
Yeah.
If you caught a 13+ pound fish there, even though you're not allowed to keep that fish by normal rule, you'd be able to keep that fish alive in a live well, or I assume up there they don't allow motorboats, but you'd be able to keep that fish alive until you call that fisheries biologist to come and verify that fish and take all the information and data off the fish and then release them. And then you'd be in the Hall of Fame Club. And there's a various assortment of prizes and recognition that comes with big bass in those 3 categories. And this thing runs all the way through April. It's a pretty exciting program. I read about it yesterday. It's called Trophy Catch, and it's for bass 8 pounds and larger to recognize anglers statewide. So there's going to be a lot of participation. Yeah. And there's even some Chamber of Commerces in South Florida that are offering some big monetary awards for some of these big fish.
That's a good idea.
So it's just go to our webpage. It's myfwc.com. and or go by one of our field offices, and we'll be able to give people information. There's the registration forms they need to pre-register for and send in, except for the trophy one, or the Hall of Fame one, I'm sorry, that a representative from the Division of Fisheries will need to come out and verify that fish.
Oh, that's a win-win situation.
It is.
Right
It's going to be interesting to see what kind of big fish start popping up statewide.
I guarantee you it will be. And then we're going to follow it on your website, I'm sure. And I know your biologist will get a big chunk of information from it, too.
Yep, they're going to take DNA samples from them, too, I understand.
Yeah. Cool. Very good. All right, we're going to take our final break, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So here talking about all kind of, we're talking about crabs and oysters right now. Before we get into that, though, let's look at our times for today. Panhandle Outdoors fishing times. We're looking at 10:06 this morning and 12:06, right there around lunchtime. Take a long lunch right there. And then tonight, right after midnight, 12:30 to 2:30. If you're out there floundering, just stay out there after midnight, and be a good time. They'll be moving around. All right, quickly, we're talking about crabs first.
Blue crabs. This is kind of the time of year when a lot of blue crabs are around, a lot of people going out and taking blue crabs. If you drive along Beach Drive in the evening or late afternoon, you'll see people wade fishing with dip nets and buckets. And there's also the time of year right now when the female blue crabs are full of eggs. And I want to remind everybody, we had an incident a couple of days ago where our officers had a couple individuals that were along there, and they had 30 blue crabs, and 20 were legal and 10 were egg-bearing females. And they had them in a bucket. And if you turn the female blue crab upside down, those orange-looking eggs are just bursting out from under them, and it's not hard to tell. And they didn't volunteer; they had them kind of tucked under their bucket of legal ones. So they got a ticket for taking egg-bearing female blue crabs. But just want to caution everybody to look at them before you take them and put them in your bucket or your nets if you're doing it off a dock or a seawall, and turn the egg-bearing females go or loose. It'll help for the future, obviously. But there seems to be a pretty healthy blue crab take right now along some of those flats. And I don't know, you mentioned you went to St. Joe. There's time we used to see them scalloping, and we'd dip them up as a bycatch of scalloping. I actually did not see as many this year as I did last year. And it fluctuates. But the biggest thing is leave those egg-bearing females alone, and hopefully that'll help out.
Well, the reason for that, I think we stayed in such shallow water this year. We just didn't get in deep water, so we didn't see as many. I had one of my students went crabbing this past weekend. She and her boyfriend and family, and they saw a lot of they got a lot of crabs, but they saw a lot of scallops out there along Beach Drive. And they said they let them go and all, but that was a good sign.
It's coming back.
Yeah, that's good.
Coming back.
Now, oysters real quick.
Oysters. As everybody's probably seen and heard on the news and read in the paper, the oyster situation in Apalachicola is not good. The beds are not in good shape, and there's a big concern about the oyster beds here in Bay County, in West Bay, North Bay, and East Bay. And the fishermen have volunteered to reduce their bag limit. The commercial season opens on the 1st for harvest of oysters, and the bag limit is 20 bags for commercial harvester. I just wanted to assure everybody that we're doing what we can to to monitor step-up patrols and keep our eye on the Bay County beds, as well as the Apalachicola beds, which is an area to our east. Hopefully this thing will turn around. I've heard that it's due to lack of fresh water coming out of the river. Those oysters need a delicate balance of fresh water and salt water in order to grow and to keep their parasites and predators off of the young, which is called the spat. If the salinity goes too high, the saltwater predators and the organisms that eat the spat can tolerate and live in the saltier water, which helps to kill the beds because of the young oysters. If the balance is right for fresh water to salt, it pushes the salt water back, and what eats the spat or preys on the spat can't tolerate the fresh water, so therefore they can grow faster and better. So
that's a good explanation.
It's a balance, from what I hear from biologists, it's a balance of fresh and salt water salinity that affects the health of the oyster beds. And that's the problem down there now. So we have stepped up patrols and are trying to keep the overharvest and harvesting in closed area, because it's a big public health issue as well. If people take oysters from bad areas or closed areas or areas that are unhealthy, and those oysters get into the restaurants and the food service industry, we have a public health concern, and it is not good. So it affects a lot of people in a lot of ways. Unfortunately for our oyster fishermen and the restaurants and all that depend on them, it's not a good situation right now.
And we've heard it over and over. We heard it, straight from the horse's mouth, and your biologists have said this, and also the price is really going to go up too because of this.
It's already up.
Going up. So be prepared for that, and hopefully, I don't know what's going to happen on the river, but it's going to look good. Well, can we run out of time again?
Oh, wow.
Thanks, buddy.
Enjoyed it.
All right.
Went by fast.
Folks, I want to thank y'all too for watching the show. Appreciate you supporting our sponsors, and sometime during the course of the day now, you have a chance to do something good for somebody, and take advantage of it. God bless you.
Thanks for joining us for Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors features hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.